Hello YouTubers, Gil again. So on this video, Furries is gonna show you some videos today. Just kidding. Well, anyway, for today with this video, I'm gonna work on a few requests from some of you. One request I got, it's from DG on my latest vlog video, like my latest video from 4 days ago or whatever. So I have a little request. Tell them how we used to have to buy stuff without all those computer sites. You know, how did we used to do that? Well, I'll talk about that. And then I have another request. I'm gonna work on a few requests today, at random requests, so to speak. And then I got another request from Eric Kennedy, another YouTuber, like talking about rental stores, record stores, shopping malls, what Halloween was like in the 80s. Well, I think I have a video already up, but you know what? Halloween in the 80s. I did not record anything during those times, and even probably the early 90s. I didn't record much then. The reason why is because the camcorders that we had back in the day, they weren't really good performers in the night. They weren't good. I mean, at least the VHS CPR 250 that I had, that was really bad on the low light. It could not handle it, so it could not handle the low light, so I unfortunately did not record much of Halloween. You know, maybe I just recorded a couple of shots of my kid, or Cynthia, or it's just some traces that I have. You know, only traces for the 80s. But in the 90s, though, I do have a lot from the 90s, including like the early 90s when I got my next camcorder, the Sony Handycam. That was actually really good on the low light. But from the 80s, I don't have anything in the 80s because, for one, I had the camcorder in 1980. My first camcorder was in 1988, so I only had 2 years to record Halloween. And I didn't record a Halloween on any of those years because the camcorder sucked on the low light. So I could not even use it. Despite of paying $1,000 for the camcorder, it could not do low light. It could not handle the low light really well, or at least if I wanted one that can handle the low light, I would have had to spend like another $500 to get a camcorder, another $500 on top of the $1,000 that I saved for the other one. So I would have had to buy it for $1,500. I would have needed $1,500 for this camcorder to be able to do something like that. Well, anyway, so that's just a part of the request. So I don't have nighttime shots or Halloween, and then I have another request that I'm gonna work on, random request, and it's from George Cole, and he's requesting that I upload videos from like Christmas of 2008 till January 2009, and I'm gonna go ahead and work on that. So I'm gonna go ahead and upload some of the modern videos. Well, this video is 10 years old in question. Well, anyway, so talking about I'll talk about DG's request first of all. See, I've been asked. Let me see. I've been asked, how did we used to buy stuff without the computer sites, and how did we used to go find a job? Well, we had to do everything manually back then, you know. It's like, how do we used to find jobs, or how did I used to buy stuff? Well, we didn't have any sites or anything like that, so we had to do, we had to go to the store. We had to manually go to the store to buy the stuff that we wanted back in the day. Like, let's say that we have this new product coming out, and we all heard about it on TV or friends had it or whatever. So I mean, so we didn't have any way of knowing of getting it without having to get out of the house and go to the store. We had to manually go to the store to buy everything we wanted, including stuff that we could not find, or including things that were hard to find. Well, if you had something that's really hard to find, you're a shit out of luck. You'll have to go drive around town looking for it. It's not like eBay where you could buy, where you can instantly find something. And even if it was not something easy to find, you'd likely still be able to find it, but you would have to pay a pretty penny for it through an auction and stuff. But back then, if you had something that was hard to find, you're shit out of luck. You have to go drive all over town to hope to find that product. But, you know, most likelihood it's not a product that's hard to find. So, I mean, we all had to do manually. We manually had to go to the store. We had to go to the store ourselves to buy everything. I mean, we didn't have, and for jobs, we had to, well, like sometimes we would go to the newspaper and they would have these ads, job ads, but we had to go through the newspaper though to find a jobs, basically. And then we would call the number. We would call that number and ask them if there's openings or whatever, and then they would tell us to go over there and fill out an application. Or sometimes we would just go to the job themselves to fill out an application. But it was all through the newspaper. All through the newspaper we used to do this on jobs, looking for jobs. Or for my case, back in the late 80s, I mean, I had a difficult time finding a job, but, you know, for McDonald's, you know, we used to just go in there, or we knew somebody who can get us a job in McDonald's or whatever. Or if not, then we would just go ourselves and apply and hope that we would get hired. But it was actually kind of hard to get a job back then, you know. It was hard back then. I mean, I don't know about, well, today, it seems like it's easier right now, but I mean, it just depends. But back then, I'm just talking about my experience. So back in my day, like, it was hard for me to get a job, but the way I used to go to get jobs, I used to actually go in the job and apply. I mean, or I used to call the newspaper, you know. I used to do the newspaper, call them up, and ask them if there's any openings, and they would tell me go ahead and fill out an application, go in there. But you know, we always went in the building, or we always went to the facility to fill out the application. It's not like today's times. Now most jobs now require you to fill out online now. Most of these jobs require online fill out, which is okay, I guess. I mean, but it's kind of hard for me to get a job filling out online though, because it seems like it tends to like get not noticed by, like, it seems like they get a load of emails or whatever, and it seems like they tend to not notice some applications or whatever. But anyway, that's today. But back then, we used to go to the building. We always went to the building to get the jobs or to apply. And how I got my Lisa's coffee shop job, the one that I saved $1,000 to buy my camcorder, my brother Hector was working there, and he got me the job there basically. So I didn't have to try there. And my brother got me the job there then. And then for the McDonald's job, I knew somebody. I mean, my friend, my neighbor, got me a job there, so I didn't have to really try. I mean, fortunately, I didn't have to try. But for the Apple one or the agency job, well, my brother Hector told me about it, and then I decided to fill out an application. I went to the building to fill it out. And then within the day, they got me a job, though, a temporary. Well, temporary jobs are easier to get than any specific job. So, I mean, then, okay. So for this video, I'm gonna talk about the other things that I have a request for, and then the other request that I have was, let's see. I'm talking about like rental stores, family-owned mom and pop type stores, record stores, shopping malls, Halloween. I already went through that back in when the kids used to their imagination. Well, I've heard talking about costumes. I mean, I did not. Well, today and yesterday, kids use their imaginations. I know back then the youngsters used their imaginations to create their own costumes. A lot of people did that back then, and today they did that back then too. And for today, it's like back then. I did not. I used my imagination to create some costumes back then. One time I dressed up as a fat man or something like put a pillow in my stomach area and make myself look like a big fat man, and I would put a beard on. I did that once. But I used to buy costumes. I used to do how we call it. I used to dress up as Batman, or one time my mom bought us costumes and bought me a Batman costume, and I don't remember. I think of Arnold, my brother, a Robin costume or something. And then I got so into it. I got so into my costume even before Halloween came, and I got so into it, it started to rip. Then I told my mom that I didn't want to wear it anymore. I was like 6 or 7 back then. And I told my mom that I didn't want to wear it anymore because it just had a little tear somewhere. Just a little one, no big deal. But kids, I was a kid back then. I just didn't want to wear it. So, that went to waste. And I ended up being like a football player. I dressed up in jerseys or whatever and dressed up as a football player or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But anyway. But back then and today, I think it's the same as far as costumes is concerned, about how people dress up. It's still the same thing. And then drive-in fast food restaurants where Kennedy, you're telling me about a drive-through restaurant where they used to bring the food to your car and roller skates. Well, I never used to actually experience that. I never experienced that as a kid. Maybe once or twice. But we didn't really do a lot of that. I didn't go through a lot of that. Maybe when I was a kid in the 70s, if I can remember, maybe once or twice. Even, I think it was like at a drive-in theaters. We used to go to these drive-in theaters. And we I think I remember once, but even just in the recent month or recent year, I went to this restaurant that they do that they bring you the food on roller skates. It's this restaurant called Sonic, and they're actually doing that right now. I went there in the recent year, but back then in the 80s, I did not do a lot of that. The restaurant, we used to just go in, and we do what we do today. We go in and eat. We go in, order our food, and then we would eat. But we did have a lot of birthdays at McDonald's, though, however. I think the restaurants are about the same. But you know what? One thing I have to point out is that back in the 80s, they did not have free refills back then for restaurants like McDonald's or Burger King or whatever. They did not have those back then. We used to have to buy a new soda whenever we finished our drink, I think the first refill happened probably going on to the late 80s, maybe. I can't remember exactly when, but I know that it first started around that time. But before, we did not have that. We did not do the free refill stuff back then, And then the restaurants. My favorite restaurants to visit was like Burger King. I think Burger King was probably my favorite, And of course they had Jack in the Box in the 80s, and then we used to go to this restaurant. My dad used to love to go to this restaurant. It was called Michael's Burgers. It's like one of those private-owned things. It's like a Gus Jr. There was one like in Covina somewhere. We used to go there a lot. I love their burgers, and I used to love Spires. I used to love the fish and chips there. And then we used to go to Sizzler. My dad used to love to go to those restaurants, the Sizzlers, and my mom, my dad used to love to go out. He used to love to eat the meat, like those ribs or whatever those fancy meats are, and I used to love the fish and chips. The Spires, especially Spires. Yeah, I tell you. And then what else? What else do I have to talk about? And then shopping malls. If we're talking about shopping malls, I think the malls are about the same. I mean, as far as I know, but I used to like to go to the store, KB Toy Store. I mean, that's the only thing I can really remember about the mall. But back then, like coming in the malls. Well, I mean, my brother used to go to the arcades there one time. And then we used to, Hector brought, like on one particular day, Hector had a cassette player, like one of those portable cassette players that he borrowed from a friend. And we went to the mall and he played the arcade games, I don't remember what arcade games were popular going on to the mid-80s. But I know, like, in the early 80s, Pac-Man and Asteroids and Defender or Galaxy and that type of thing were popular back then. But I don't know about going on to the mid-80s. But my brother went to the mall, went to the arcade there, and he, like, I guess a cassette player that he had, it got stolen. And I had a cassette, and my brother was borrowing a cassette of mine, and I was like really upset about it. And I actually even have well, actually I think I do. Well, I feel like I have a cassette recording of me being upset about losing my cassettes, but I don't think I do anymore. But anyway, back then, so that was like the malls, and those malls are the same, I mean, back then, like, if I would have brought my video camera in the mall back in the 90s or 80s, they didn't care. They didn't seem to care when I brought a video camera in there. If anything, they would say hi, and they would know that they're going on TV, so to speak, What else do I have to say? So, I mean, I think this wraps up for this video, talking about my experiences, like about how we used to find jobs, and then that was even going on to the 90s, all this that I'm talking about went on to the 90s as well. I mean, the jobs, I mean, even went on to the 2000s. Everything was the same way, going on to the 2000s, like 90s or 80s, especially 80s, like back then. I mean, I was in the 80s, and for the job, like I was wishing back then that I could work full-time, but it was hard for me to get a job full-time because at this industrial type job, I mean, I got this job through Apple One, and I was getting paid $5 an hour versus $4.25 at McDonald's. And then, excuse me. And so, I mean, but it was hard for me to get full-time, as much as I wanted to work full-time, because I would have loved to see almost $200 a week working full-time, but they rarely had a full-time, though. I was always typically working like 3 days a week at the most on the average. So I used to bring home maybe $75, $50 a week, and I had that money to live by to pay for everything that I needed to do, like work on my scooter, my Mercury marquees that I used to have back then, and just wasn't enough money back then. But it was hard to get full-time, for me anyway. I don't know about everybody else, but for me it was hard for me to get a full-time job. But I mean, McDonald's, I mean, I never worked full-time, as much as I would have been more than happy to get full-time, but they didn't have full-time. I used to typically work 20 hours, and I used to bring home $150 every 2 weeks at McDonald's. And the biggest check I ever got was $250 in 2 weeks working full-time in McDonald's. But that's what I had to live by, I mean, if I would have worked full time, I would have been happy. I mean, the money would have been happy with me, you know. I mean, but unfortunately, I never had full time, you know. But so, and then during those times of the job, I used to actually, I mean, I was like wanting to get a job. I mean, I was wanting to get a better job, but I felt it was kind of hard for me to get one, you know. I mean, anyway, I'd try, if I can remember, McDonald's. Like when it came to wanting to look for a job, I went to the penny saver. I mean, looking for a better job. I used to go to the penny saver as well for the jobs. And then talking about that, I used to I went through the ad like where they offered the auto tune-up store or the auto tune-up job, earn $400 a week and no training necessary if willing to train. And I went through that, and then they had this other job that they were advertising on the paper, the penny saver book. They were advertising like assembling products, earn up to $1,200 a week or whatever, or $400. I don't know what it was. I just know that it sounded really good. It sounded like very good to be true, you know. So, I mean, I tried it, and it came out to be a scam, kind of, you know. It came out not being legit, you know, like the job, because I had to pay all these fees to start it, you know, and it was just not going to work out, because you would end up having to pay for the materials to do the products, and it was kind of a mess. So it was not legit. It wasn't legit for me. And then the other thing and then the auto tune-up. It's like I called for that, and it turned out being a school, because it was misleading that they were saying that it's a job. The way they put it, it sounds like it's a job. It sounds like they have a job opening, you know. It's making it misleading, you know. So I call a number, and then it comes out being an application for a school. But I was 19 years old, 18 years old at the time, or 19. So okay, I'll fill out this application. And that's when I discovered that it was a school, but I didn't think much of it back then. So I got through all this through the penny saver book. Nothing, no computers, nothing. It was all through the penny saver. But all these jobs, I got it through the paper, you know, or I got it through friends, you know, like friends or somebody I knew. But if I didn't know any friends, it would have been through the penny savers, or just walking into McDonald's or any place that we want to try to get a job at, you know, just basically walking to it, you know, or penny savers or newspapers. That's how we used to do jobs, or that's how we used to find everything. And then shopping, you know, we used to have to go to the store manually. We had to, like, whenever we wanted something, we had to go to the store. There was no way around it. But maybe they did have these mail orders. Sometimes you could, like, they have these little newspapers, like where the catalogs, or sometimes you can get mailed a catalog or something, and then you order it through the catalog. But you would have to fill out the checks. You would have to fill out the little card that they gave you, or it was just this card. They would give you these cards, and you fill out the item number or whatever, and then you would mail it. And then you used to mail that stuff, and then they would mail you or you can actually call in the order. Sometimes on certain things you could call in. You're able to call in some orders, but I mean, I don't know anyone who used to really actually do that, though. I mean, we used to just do physical stores, you know, but and we used to just like the Columbia House, you know, like that was ultimately how we used to do it, how we used to do shopping online. Well, it was not even online. It was like Columbia House. They used to always mail these advertisements, and then, you know, like, and then the Columbia House, you know, we did that, you know, like we did a lot of that, you know, Columbia House, you know, like we would go look through their catalog, you know, their paper catalog. They're all the latest albums that they had, and then we would write down all the numbers, like they used to have like one deal they had one time. It was like buy 4 or buy 3 or buy 1 and get 3 for free. and forever. Like there was no commitments or anything. Like that was like a cheaper one, or like that was like the lower priced offer. And then what else? I mean, I know what they used to do. But then another offer that they used to typically do, and we did this one. It was like buy one get 10 for free, or it was something like get 14 for the price of one, or for 1 penny. Remember that stuff? Buy 14 or get 11 or something, and for 1 penny. But you were required to buy 5 in the next 3 years at full price. But like every month they would send us these catalogs, paper catalogs, and then we would write down the numbers on this card, and then we would mail in the card, and then that's what we used to do. And then mail in the bills. We used to mail in our checks, and the bills, it's the same thing. They used to mail us paper bills. I mean, that was the only way. We used to do paper bills, you know, like it was all by paper, you know, like they would mail us a bill, and then we would have to send out our checks, write out our checks, and then mail it back. And then we would do this every month, you know. There was nothing online, nothing to do with computers, you know, nothing, you know. We did everything by paper, by either paper or by manually going everywhere, doing everything manually, you know. Yeah, that's how we used to do things, you know, Columbia House. And then about some subjects, like the malls, it's kind of like basically the same, you know, like Halloween is about the same, you know, as far as I can remember. I mean, everything's about the same, but, you know, today's times, though, I mean, it's like you can't even dress up as a clown without worrying about being arrested or being cursed at or whatever, because there's this thing going on with clowns, you know, like people are getting all terrified by clowns, or they keep talking about, you know, clowns and stuff, and like it's like this today, and it was not like that in the 80s, you know, in the 80s, but now there's a little more controversy about things like that now, you know. But anyways, so I would say this wraps up for this video, talking about like those specific subjects, about like how I dealt with those in the 80s versus today. And so, I mean, I hope you liked this video, and Hair or Furry is asking you guys if you liked this video or not. Okay, well, okay. I hope you liked this video. I know it's kind of long, but I hope you liked it, though. Alright.